Panelists are Senator James Halligan of Stillwater, who chairs the Senate Education Subcommittee, Nico Gomez, who is the Executive Director of the Oklahoma Health Care Authority, the state's Medicaid agency, Meredith Exline, who chairs OK Central Parents Legislative Advocacy Committee, and Sean Wallace, who's the Director of Oklahoma Corrections Professionals. And again, we will start with some brief introductory remarks from our panelists, and we'll start with Senator Halligan.
Thank you very much, David. I'd like to salute you for putting this group together, and thank you for inviting me. As many of you know, I spent 20 years as the senior executive at various universities, and then through a strange quirk of fate, now find myself in the legislature. I guess having interacted with legislators in Arkansas and New Mexico and Oklahoma in depth before this assignment, I have found it to be a real learning experience. One of the outstanding things that comes to your mind when you serve in this position is that people don't want to raise taxes. Stillwater just had a vote and had 3 issues, really quality of life, infrastructure, and roads. They went down 80% against, 75% against, and 70% against in a very large turnout. Zowie. So, politics is the art of the possible, not the art of the perfect. If you're running an organization, you've got to figure out what is possible. What is possible in Oklahoma is that we have to put together, particularly policies in education, that will improve our workforce. We have a skill set mismatch, a serious skill set mismatch in Oklahoma. We have lots of jobs and not the people who can fill them. GE is coming to Oklahoma City. They're going to hire a lot of engineers. OSCO is coming to Stillwater, going to invest $50 to $100 million. They need lots of engineers. We know what we need to do in Oklahoma. So the question is, how do we adjust our education policies such that we can actually address those skill set mismatches? And trying to get it all in 3 minutes. That involves, in my judgment, an additional move towards outcomes-based funding. What outcomes-based funding means, if someone wants to study Russian literature, that's just fine for them to do, but the state doesn't need a lot of people studying Russian literature. So how do we adjust our policies such that we get the right skill sets coming out of our universities? And also, we've got to get the right skill sets coming out of career tech. Approximately 25% of the population needs to have a college degree, 75% needs to go to career tech, and I'll stop with that because I'm out of time. Thank you very much for inviting me.
We'll next hear from Mr. Gomez with the Health Care Authority.
Good morning. Again, thank you. I'll echo the thanks for the invitation, David, the Institute. Just real briefly, I was lamenting to David earlier that, $5 billion program, taking care of 1 million people a year, distilling that within 3 minutes. I'll do my best. Significant issues with both the state and federal budget. This is funded by a state and federal partnership where we have federal matching dollars, but we have to put up state dollars in order to get those matching dollars. Right now, for every state dollar we put up, we get about $1.78 back. With that $2.78, we're out there being the largest public purchaser of health care in the state of Oklahoma. In terms of covered lives, we're probably nearly one of the largest pure purchasers in terms of covered lives. So we have a significant impact in the state, and our budget needs are significant too. We're talking about an entitlement program, so there are certain requirements the state has to meet in order to qualify for the federal matching dollars. This last fall, the federal government notified us that our federal matching rate is going down. And the reason it's going down is it's a federal funding formula that's based on the state's per capita income relative to the nation on a 3-year rolling average. So as the Oklahoma's economy does better relative to the national economy, our federal matching dollars that support our program will be reduced. And this one's significant. It's actually it'll go down 1.72 percentage points. It's equivalent to a 2.7% loss in federal funds. It's the largest, it'll be the lowest match rate that we've had since the late 1980s. So I'm taking a budget that's just bare bones to the Capitol. It says we need about $144 million. You heard about the deficit. I'm asking for $144 million just to keep the program the same as it is today. Same benefit structure, same qualifications, same rate structure. 50 million of that, 144 million, is driven by this loss in federal matching dollars. 44 million of it is driven by being able to keep up with just the number of people coming in the program, number of people utilizing these services. And then we're also trying to replace about $40 million in previous, we're working to save money each year. And we take that previous year's savings and apply it to the next year's budget, but that money has to be replaced in the current budget. With that, I know we'll probably get some questions related to that, but obviously our budget needs are significant and it's certainly going to have an impact on the budget negotiations going forward.
Ms. Axelrod?
Thank you for inviting me. I feel very humbled to be sitting up here. As a parent of 2 children in public education, now representing parents across the metro area, it is very concerning to me that public education does not seem to be a priority for our state. We have around over 35,000 more students and $200 less per pupil since 2008. Yet we continue to boast and implement standards to make our students college and career ready. If that is truly our goal, then we must restore education funding to a level we can effectively pay teachers a competitive salary and provide the needed resources for our students to be successful. Education funding has not been restored to pre-recession levels of 2008. Historically, during other economic disparities, when the economy has rebounded, the legislature has restored that funding. Even though an increase in public education was granted in 2014, our state funding formula only saw 21 million of those dollars. Education has been given many mandates to improve college and career readiness for our students. But sadly, they clearly do not meet the expectations that these mandates require, and more funding is needed. Education got 38% of state appropriations in 2000, and now currently gets less than 34%. Many of the state declare via conversations and media outlets, administrative costs are too high. The administrators are hoarding the carryover funds. Well, as many may not realize, there are actually state statutes that prevent this from happening. And in fact, if this is a concern and we need to lower that percentage, then it should go back to the legislature, because or if districts are not adhering to the law, then that should be taken care of in such a venue. Otherwise, we need to stop this bannering, and we need to focus on properly funding current mandates and not instilling any new mandates until we can take care of the ones that we're expecting of our students and our teachers. As we continue to see an increase in student population, larger class sizes, and parent organizations having to raise money for items that state should be funding for our schools, parents' desire for increasing education funding is expected. Having toured many different schools in a job previously, and having 2 sisters who work in a school that do not have a lot of parent involvement, I can tell you without a doubt parent involvement is a difference maker in those schools. Parents should be available to assist their children with their work and their education. They should be able to support their children. They should not have to be working to raise funds for their schools that the state should require, or should fund. What can we do with the money? I hear often asked, what would it look like if all children had a reading specialist and a math specialist they could access in their school building? What it would look like that teachers could effectively work with students who are struggling if they had class sizes smaller than 28 or 30 in their building. A teacher could be more effective with their students that way. Technology could be better supported. And just to think of all the social issues that are being faced in our schools and how our counselors are now stuck with working with standardized testing and planning all of that element. Who's there to support the social issues that our school faces? For the future, I would implore the legislature that all state funding given to public and private entities should be held to the same accountability which public education has recently been charged. I would also welcome we better scrutinize tax breaks given to businesses. It's time for all stakeholders to come together and do what is best for our state and our future, our children. It's my hopes that we move forward together with all our voices at the table. Thank you.
We'll now hear from Sean.
Thank you, David. Thank you, OK Policy. I think this legislative session is going to be a pivotal one and a crucial one for the state of Oklahoma regarding criminal justice policy in the state. The DOC is out of beds. Its budget today is still $40 million short of where it was in 2009, despite an increase of the prison population of nearly 2,000 inmates. To pay for this growth, the agency has reduced its workforce by nearly a quarter in just 5 years, losing almost 500 corrections officers in the process. A recent report our organization produced showed Oklahoma has the worst staffing levels in the nation. Kansas has less than half the number of inmates in state prisons, and yet has 400 more corrections officers on the job. Officers at all 9 medium security prisons in the state now work mandatory 60 hours a week. And this is what happens when staffing levels get to where they are today. Last month, a female case manager was brutally beaten in her office at a prison in Lexington. There was 1 officer on her unit and 160 inmates. And that is absolutely the normal. A national report came out just a few days ago showing that Mabel Bassett, a female medium security prison in McLeod, has the highest rate of reported rapes in the country. Just yesterday, an inmate was found dead in his cell at the Oklahoma State Reformatory, the cause of which is under investigation. Counties are suing the state because of the high number of state inmates, nearly 2,000, backed up in their jails. Counties are also suing the state for the amount of money that the state pays them to house these offenders, which is much less than it actually costs them. The state utilizes 3 private prisons to house offenders, and they're full too. That is where we are today. It's scary, it's dangerous, and it's only getting worse by the day. So today we're at a fork in the road. The one path will lead us to an expanded use of private prisons, and this path will cost the taxpayers millions of dollars more. It will guarantee that Oklahoma continues to lead the world for incarcerated women, and will be very close on men too. And our staff will remain shorthanded and in danger. The other path would be to do something to stop the inmate population growth, saving taxpayers many millions, allowing the DOC to get back on its feet and properly staff its facilities, eliminating the 60-hour work weeks for officers, paying them more than $11.83 an hour to start, restoring programs that seek to reduce recidivism, reducing our incarceration rate, and perhaps even improving public safety. We advocate for the second path. We've teamed up this year with a coalition of bipartisan organizations, and we have several bills that could help put a stop to the growth and be a start for change. One clarifies the 85% crime statute. Another allows for the potential early release of aged and infirm inmates. And another seeks to reduce the number of nonviolent offenders who are serving life without parole. In the long term, however, Oklahoma will have to address sentencing policy, and our members deserve to be recognized for their service and deserve to be listened to. They plead for help. Oklahoma needs to choose the path now. Thank you.
This first question is for Senator Halligan. As you know, we've heard already today, all state agencies and programs have taken budget cuts in recent years. And I mean, education has been, compared to some agencies, it's been cut a lower percentage, but it has taken some considerable funding cuts. And I mean, few would deny that schools need more money, but there is some disagreement, I believe, about how to spend the funding and what should be expected in return. Would you say that additional funding should be tied to additional reforms? And if so, what changes do you think would be necessary?
One of the joys of being as old as I am is that you can speak your mind. Again, politics is the art of the possible, not the art of the perfect. There's a lot of people that want you to do the art of the perfect, and it's never going to happen. So don't mislead yourself when you're trying to do something. It will. The answer to your question is no. I think we ought to fund the current reforms that we have in place. before we put in additional ones? Do I have a lot of people who come to me? If you go to my pickup, you'll see I have people that come continuously saying, here is a new mandate that we ought to put on the public schools. There is no shortage of people telling you how we should improve the public schools, and they don't want to fund them.
And again, for Senator Halligan, I mean, we don't have the final numbers yet, and, you know, hopefully things will be better in February, but if state agencies do end up having to take cuts this year, do you anticipate that somehow public schools can either be spared or take smaller reductions than some agencies?
Well, I am still optimistic that the numbers are going to improve. That's just the world I live in. So I'd much rather wait until that time to make that decision. But again, since I get to speak clearly without hesitation, I don't really care. I don't know whether I'll run for re-election. I don't really care if I am re-elected. Okay? I hope, and it will be my effort to try to minimize the cuts to public schools.
And I guess a question, I'll ask Ms. Exline first. And I believe we're still losing good teachers to other states for, you know, reasons of, you know, the difference in salary, and it's been some time, I believe, since there's been, you know, a general uptick in the minimum salary schedule. And you know, again, we've heard all morning long about that we expect another tight budget. Should we still try to increase teacher salaries some way this year?
Well, I can only speak to my experience in speaking with teachers and having two sisters who are teachers. And one of the things that my sister wrote, who is one of the best teachers I think I've ever come across in the time that she puts into her position. And one of the things, I put a feeler out on Facebook last night about what have you seen in your schools as a result of no increase in funding. And I thought a lot of things were quite interesting. And one of the things that she wrote on there is that they have restricted access to resources such as textbooks and workbooks, and delays in needed professional development to be current. And she said something about teachers fleeing public education. And I don't know if it's really so much as the pay, because most teachers go into the profession knowing it's not a high-paying job. But when you do know that your surrounding states are paying a far larger salary, and with all the expectations and demands being placed on teachers right now, they're not even really getting the opportunity to teach anymore and do what they entered the profession for, what they wanted to do and to make a difference in students' lives, because they're spending times in meetings, analyzing data. They're having to just listen to kids read. They're not able to plan all these other kinds of things that should promote critical and cognitive skills. Instead, they're kind of being done through drills and such. So I would think that it would probably have a good impact, especially with all the higher expectations that are placed on them. I don't know if it's it's going to be the make or break. I think what's going to be the make or break is the support that they're getting in their classrooms and the resources that they need to teach these expectations that have been placed on them. To pass standards and not provide the funding for textbooks and classrooms, and I can't tell you how many times that I read on Twitter that they're paying for textbooks out of their own pockets so that they can teach the new standards in their classroom, because their districts cannot provide that for them based on the funding they've given.
This question is for Mr. Wallace. And again, you answered at least half of it. But the governor's chief counsel recently made a remark, something to the effect that prison staffing is adequate at the present. What is your response to that? Hang on. And what needs to be done to guarantee safety of both inmates and staff?
know, I honestly thought when I read those comments, and when the reporters told me what the comments were, you know, I had steam coming out my ears, but I honestly wondered if, I mean, the morale of our officers in the prisons and everyone working in the prisons is so horrendously bad right now. We haven't had a director now for about 6 months. The agency is just kind of going nowhere. And when I heard those comments, I honestly wondered if the staff was going to show up to work the next day. But they do, and it's because they believe in what they do, and they have serious concerns about their fellow employees who are in those prisons working. I mean, they're not going to walk off the job. They're going to keep doing what they're doing, despite how awful it is. And you know, I just think, you know, I don't know what the plans were. I think, I believe that the state, just, like I said, has to do something this year. It can't go on anymore. The board was just given 3 options by the agents. They asked for options on what to do about the increasing offender population, and all 3 options are horrifically bad. The first option is to basically fill up every gymnasium or every day room in facilities with inmates. And with current staffing levels the way they are, someone will die. Inmates will die or staff will die. I mean, there's no 2 ways about it. The other option is to attempt to utilize private prisons more. And I don't know if that option is even on the table. California is battling with their courts. We have 2 vacant private prisons, but those private prisons don't want us. I mean, they don't want Oklahoma inmates. They're way too cheap compared to California. California and the federal government will pay a lot more money than we will. So that option may not even be on the table. So I think the legislature has really, honestly, one option, and that is to stop the growth in the prisons.